Hello everyone, welcome to Get Snoozy, where you relax, you listen, you sleep. Today, we bring you a collection of stories that will tear open the wounds stitched beneath our smiles. Late summer, 2010. Abandoned train tracks behind an old church. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the rusted rails as teenage Cole and Ivy sat side by side, kicking stones and sipping cheap soda. Their town, once buzzing with steel and smoke, had gone quiet years ago, but for them, it still held stories. Ivy's notebook rested in her lap, half poems, half plans, and Cole was sketching on the back of a diner receipt. "This place is a cage," Ivy said, staring at the horizon like it might open up and carry her away. "We'll get out," Cole replied, more certain than he felt. "One day, together." Ivy smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "Promise?" He nodded. "Promise." They carved their initials into the wood beam of the old bridge they always walked home across, just above where the town creek ran slow and brown. Back then, their hearts were full of fire, and the future felt like something they could touch if they just believed hard enough. Neither of them knew that life had already started pulling them in opposite directions. Present day, same town, same streets, just older and quieter. Cole's alarm buzzed at 5:47 a.m., an old, rattling sound that matched the hum of his life. He rolled out of bed in his father's creaking house, pulled on a hoodie, and stepped into the gray morning. Outside, Main Street looked the same as it had for years. Cracked sidewalks, boarded up storefronts, the gas station still flickering its open sign like it was unsure. He drove to his night shift job at the paper mill on the edge of town. Same route, same faded billboards. He didn't mind the routine anymore. You stop dreaming when dreaming starts to hurt more than waking up. His dad was worse lately. Some nights he didn't even make it to bed, just fell asleep on the couch, half a bottle in his lap, the TV still glowing with reruns from a world that had moved on. Cole didn't complain. He couldn't. Ivy had left 6 years ago on a full-ride scholarship, big city ambitions, and wide-open skies. She was supposed to make it. She did. And he'd stayed for his dad, stayed because he couldn't leave, stayed because someone had to. Sometimes, in the quiet between machines, Cole would wonder if she ever thought of him, of the bridge, of the promises he'd never reached out. Not really. What could he say that he was still here, still tired, still waiting for a version of himself that never showed up? He figured she forgot. Until one Thursday afternoon, in the parking lot of the grocery store, he turned, and there she was, Ivy, backlit by sunlight, holding a paper bag of apples, looking exactly the same and nothing like he remembered. Cole didn't say anything at first, just stared, the wind catching Ivy's hair like it used to when they were 16 on the back of his dad's truck. She blinked, smiled nervously, then broke the silence. "Hey, stranger." He nodded. "Didn't think I'd see you again." They ended up at that old coffee shop downtown, Marlene's. It still smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon rolls. They sat in the corner booth where they'd planned their escape all those years ago. The mural on the wall had faded, just like the edges of their memory. Ivy sipped her coffee, watching him over the rim of her cup. "You still drink it black?" "Some things don't change." She gave a half laugh. "Some things do." They talked about surface things, her job in Philadelphia, his hours at the mill, how the football team still sucked. But under the words was a thick silence, a question neither of them wanted to ask. Why didn't you try harder? Why didn't you take me with you? Finally, Ivy looked down and whispered, "I thought you'd leave too." Cole's jaw tightened. "I couldn't." "I know," she said quickly. I hoped." His fingers traced the rim of his mug. "I hoped too." They sat there, surrounded by old folks, playing cards and kids with hot chocolate mustaches, and the space between them felt like 100 years. He wanted to tell her how many nights he'd driven past the train tracks, wondering what would have happened if he'd jumped on with her. She wanted to tell him she still kept a photo of them under the bridge in her wallet. But they didn't. Not yet. They just finished their coffee in silence, the weight of what wasn't said sitting heavy between them. The porch creaked as Ivy sat on the steps beside him. Cole had a beer in hand, his eyes fixed on the gravel road. Across the street, porch lights flickered on one by one, like tiny stars in a sky too close to the ground. "This place," Ivy said softly, "it hasn't changed." Cole gave a dry laugh. "It never does." The silence between them wasn't awkward now, just heavy, familiar, like two people reading different pages of the same book. She looked over at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You used to tell me we were gonna run away. Remember that night on the bridge?" He nodded, jaw clenched. "I remember everything." He wanted to tell her how every morning he walked past the bridge on the way to work, how he couldn't bring himself to look at their carved names. "I thought about you," she said after a pause, "more than you probably think." "You left," he said, sharper than intended. She flinched. "I didn't have a choice. You did. You just didn't choose me." The words hung in the humid air, thick with truth and bitterness. Ivy blinked quickly, trying not to cry. "I came back," she whispered. Cole looked at her now, really looked. She was different, sharper, older, carrying weight in her shoulders that wasn't there before. But in her eyes, he still saw the girl who used to swing her legs off that bridge and dream out loud. "I know," he said, "but I'm not the same guy." "I know that too." They sat there in the dark, the porch light buzzing above them. Two people too far gone, too close to what once was. The past still pulsed between them, warm and painful. "I missed you," she finally said. He didn't answer, but his hand moved closer on the step and didn't pull away. Cole sat on the same side of the bridge where they'd carved their names years ago. The world seemed quieter here, as if the bridge itself had a secret to keep. The rustling leaves seemed to murmur in rhythm with the creaking wood beneath them. Ivy had joined him after dinner, their footsteps muted on the gravel path leading up to the bridge. She didn't say much, just let the silence hang between them, the kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, but necessary. They both knew that the moment they stepped onto this bridge, the weight of the years would settle on them, and the past would rush in with all its unanswered questions. "I haven't been here in so long," Ivy said, almost to herself, her eyes searching the horizon as she leaned against the railing. Cole watched her closely, the tightness in his chest growing, the way she'd said it, as if this place didn't belong to her anymore. "I still remember everything," he said, his voice raw, "the way you looked when we promised." She nodded, a wistful smile pulling at the corner of her lips. "We were so sure back then, so full of plans." His eyes flicked to the carved names on the wooden railing. "Do you still think about leaving?" Ivy turned to him, her gaze uncertain for a moment. "Every day." Cole's heart skipped a beat. "And yet here you are," he said softly. Her smile faltered. "I thought I could never come back, but I was wrong." "Why? What changed?" Cole asked, almost desperate to understand, to know if this time it was different. If they were different. She sighed, looking down at their names, then back at him. "Because I thought I was escaping something, but what I really needed was to find myself. I thought running away would give me everything, but all it gave me was a bigger world and a deeper emptiness. Cole felt the familiar ache in his chest. She was right. She had escaped, and in doing so, she left a part of herself behind here, in this town, with him. But he didn't know how to make her see that her leaving hadn't just been about her dreams. It was about leaving him too. "And what about me?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "What about the promises we made?" Ivy's eyes met his, and there was a soft sadness in them. "I never forgot. I just didn't know how to come back to you without feeling like I was running backwards." Cole swallowed the lump in his throat. "I don't know if we can go back, but we can still move forward." Ivy stepped closer, her hand brushing against his as they stood side by side, looking at the fading sun. "Then maybe it's time to stop running." The air between them shifted, like the very earth below them was holding its breath, waiting for them to make a choice. The bridge felt different now. The air was heavier, laden with the weight of everything unspoken. Ivy's hand was still next to Cole's, but it was the slightest touch, a tentative offering of connection after so much time apart. Cole could feel the tremor in her fingers, the way she was holding back, afraid that if she let go, something precious would slip away again. It was the same way he had learned to hold his feelings all these years, carefully, tightly, so nothing could escape. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if you'd stayed?" Ivy asked suddenly, breaking the stillness between them. Cole's chest tightened. He had thought about it every single day, but it was a question he had never let himself answer aloud. "All the time," he admitted, his voice thick. "But it doesn't matter now." "Why?" Ivy asked, her eyes searching his face, trying to understand. "Because you were always meant to leave," Cole said, his voice quieter now, tinged with a sadness that had settled deep within him. "You had bigger dreams, bigger things waiting for you, and I had this town, my dad, the life I couldn't escape." Ivy's eyes softened, the weight of his words sinking in. She had spent years trying to convince herself that her leaving had been a necessity, but hearing it from Cole, it felt like a brutal truth she couldn't deny. "I never meant to leave you behind," she said, the words feeling like an apology, even though it didn't quite feel enough. "I know," Cole replied, his gaze dropping to the bridge beneath them. The shadows around them seemed to deepen, as if the world itself understood the fragile nature of their conversation. but I still felt it every day. Every time you weren't here, it was like a piece of me was missing. Ivy took a deep breath, stepping closer to him. I never stopped caring about you, Cole. Not even once, but I thought leaving was the right thing to do for both of us. Cole met her gaze, his eyes intense. It wasn't the right thing, Ivy. Not for me, and not for you. Her breath hitched. Then what was the right thing? Cole paused, then reached for her hand, this time holding it fully, like he wasn't afraid of what it might mean anymore. Maybe the right thing is us figuring it out now, together, not as kids with dreams of escape, but as two people who've lived different lives, but somehow found their way back here to this place. Ivy searched his face, looking for something, reassurance perhaps. But what she saw there was raw, vulnerable honesty. The same thing she had been looking for in herself all these years. I'm not the same person I was when I left, she whispered. I'm not the same person either, Cole replied, his voice steady but filled with something deeper now. Hope, maybe. A possibility that had always seemed distant, but was suddenly within reach. Ivy stepped closer, her voice barely audible. Maybe that's a good thing. Cole didn't say anything for a moment. Then he nodded, the silence between them comfortable now. They were different. Both had changed, but there was something undeniable in the way they gravitated toward each other, like they had never really let go, even when they thought they had. Maybe it's time we stopped letting go, he said quietly. She smiled, a small, soft smile that reached her eyes. Maybe. They stood there for a long while, just holding each other's hands. No words, no promises, just the quiet understanding that sometimes the past is something you carry with you, but the future is something you choose to create. Ivy stepped onto the bridge, her boots crunching against the snow. The sky was a deep blue, the sun sinking low and casting a soft golden glow over the landscape. The cold air bit at her skin, but it didn't matter, not anymore. Cole followed behind her, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his jacket. He wasn't sure what he expected to find here, but it felt right. It felt like this was the place where everything would finally make sense, where they could decide what came next. They stopped in the middle of the bridge, where the wood was worn smooth from years of footsteps. Ivy leaned against the railing, looking out at the river. Her mind was full of memories, but it was Cole's voice that broke the silence. I wrote you a letter once, he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. back when you first left. I never sent it. I didn't know if you'd want to hear it." Ivy turned to face him, her heart racing at the sudden vulnerability in his words. "Why didn't you send it?" "I didn't think you'd want to know the truth," Cole said, his eyes meeting hers with a depth she hadn't seen before. "That I resented you for leaving, that I was angry, and I didn't know how to forgive you, but I also didn't know how to tell you I was proud of you for getting out, and I didn't know how to say goodbye." Ivy felt the weight of his words, the pain they carried, and she understood. She had always known there was more between them, more than they had ever said aloud. She had always known that leaving had cost them both. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought leaving would be the right thing for both of us. I didn't realize how much it would hurt you, or me." Cole stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know you didn't, and maybe at the time I didn't understand it either, but I do now." They stood there on that bridge, the weight of the past and the future hanging between them. It was strange, this place where everything felt both familiar and foreign, like two different versions of themselves meeting at the same point in time. "I still don't know what comes next," Ivy said, her voice quiet as she looked down at the snow-covered ground. "But I know I don't want to keep living in the past. I don't want to keep running from what I feel for you." Cole reached out, his hand brushing against hers. It was a small touch, but it felt like the beginning of something new, something they had both been too afraid to face until now. "I don't want to run either," he said, his voice steady. "I've spent too much time running from everything, from you, from this town, from myself. Maybe it's time to stop running." Ivy turned to face him fully, her heart pounding in her chest. "So, what does that mean? For us?" Cole smiled, a soft, bittersweet smile. "It means I'm ready to try, ready to figure out what happens after the years apart, after all the mistakes, ready to see where we go from here." Ivy's heart swelled in her chest, but it wasn't just with hope. It was with something deeper, something more grounded in the reality of what they had lost and what they might still be able to find. "I think I'm ready for that too." They stood together on the bridge, the world around them frozen in time. The past, with all its hurt and misunderstandings, was still there, but so was the possibility of something new, something they could build together, step by step, in a town that had never let them go. In that moment, The bridge wasn't just a place of memories. It was a place where they could finally move forward, hand in hand. The seasons changed, as they always do. The town, once a symbol of stagnation for Cole, had become the backdrop for a new chapter in both his and Ivy's lives. They'd learned to let go of the past, to forgive themselves for the dreams they couldn't hold on to, and to build something beautiful from the remnants of their old selves. One crisp autumn evening, Ivy stood beside Cole at the very same bridge where they'd carved their names as children. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with the colors of a setting sun. "I never thought I'd come back," Ivy said, her voice filled with a mixture of wonder and peace. "But I'm glad I did." Cole squeezed her hand. "Me too." They both looked at the bridge where their younger selves had promised to leave, to escape. They'd kept that promise in a way neither of them could have imagined. Not by leaving, but by staying together. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, they knew they were no longer running from the town or their past. They had found a new beginning here, not because it was the place they dreamed of, but because it was the place where they had finally found each other again. They were home, not just in the town, but in each other's hearts, and that was all they needed. Before moving to the next story, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and share your experience with us in the comments. In the summer of 2008, Tulsa, Oklahoma, hummed with cicadas, the sunflower fields glowing gold under a lazy sun. Callie, 13, sprawled in the grass, her ponytail dusted with dirt, her laugh bright as Macon's fireflies. James lay beside her, freckles dotting his cheeks, his elbow brushing hers, close enough to feel her warmth. They were kids, hearts wide open, dreaming bigger than the sky. "What'll we be at 30? Callie asked, twirling a sunflower petal, its yellow bright against her fingers. James grinned, all hope and mischief. "Pirates or astronauts, maybe." She giggled, shoving his arm. "No, really, James, will we still be us?" His grin faded, eyes tracing clouds like they held secrets. "I don't want to lose you, Callie," he said, voice soft, almost scared, her chest warmed, a spark catching. "Okay, deal. If we're single at 30, we marry each other. Promise?" His eyes widened, but he nodded, serious. "Promise." They hooked pinkies, laughter bubbling, sealing it in the summer breeze. The sun sank, painting the field gold, and that silly pact sank deep, a seed neither knew would grow to break their hearts. December, years later, snow-dusted Tulsa's streets, the same diner glowing with neon like Reno's lights, the same creaky gas station unchanged. Callie, now 29, drove back from Chicago, her dad's heart trouble pulling her home. The city had sharpened her, graphic designer, fast-paced, too big for Tulsa's quiet. She felt like a stranger, her heart heavy with a life that didn't fit anymore. At Miller's Market, grabbing coffee, she stopped cold. James, same flannel, same shy smile, but thinner, eyes tired, like he'd carried too much. Callie, he said, voice soft, like she might vanish. They hugged, and it was like slipping into a warm quilt, like Jack's in the quilt on the porch swing. Over diner coffee, hours melted, memories of sunflower races, their carved initials on the school fence, his life stuck fixing cars in Tulsa, hers racing in the city. Remember our pact? He asked, stirring his mug, eyes distant. Callie's heart caught, a sunflower seed stirring. Yeah, she said, smiling. Pirates or astronauts, right? Snow fell outside, and something in her softened, like she'd come home just in time. Mid-December, snow blanketed Tulsa, and Callie and James slipped back into each other's lives. A walk by the frozen lake became late-night drives, streetlights smudging through frosted windows, neon glowing soft. They'd pass their old school, initials etched deep, Tulsa's jazz humming low. With James, Callie forgot Chicago's chaos. He was steady, his laugh warm, his presence home. They'd sit on his creaky porch swing, sipping cocoa, snowflakes catching in her hair, their silences full of unspoken love. But something wasn't right. He winced on stairs, forgot her words, stared into nothing, eyes cloudy. One night, on his worn couch, blankets piled, he said, I need this December to mean something, Callie. Her stomach nodded, fear creeping in. What's wrong, James? She asked, voice small. He smiled, dodging, his hand squeezing hers. You're here, that's enough. She didn't press, afraid to break this fragile glow, scared of the truth hiding in his eyes. She let herself love him, snow-bussing, not knowing their time was a candle burning out. A week before Christmas, Callie grasped James's coat for a store run, and a bottle fell out, oxaliplatin. Her hands trembled as she read, cancer's reality slamming into place, his cough, his frail frame, the way he held her like he was etching her into his heart. She sat, world silent, as James walked in, his smile crumbling. "How long?" she whispered, tears spilling. "Long enough," he said, eyes dodging hers, voice steady but breaking. "I wanted you to see me, Callie, not the sickness." Her tears weren't pity but love, fierce and raw, for the boy who'd been her sunflowers, her sky. "I wanted your smile, not your tears," he said softer. She grabbed his hand, shaking. "Then we make this December ours, James, every moment." They held tight, love and grief woven close, snow muffling Tulsa's hum, a storm stealing their time. Callie poured her heart into their days, every second a sunflower saved. They baked cookies in his cramped kitchen, flour dusting their faces, laughing like they were 13. They drove to the lake, snow crunching, and carved their initials deeper into the fence, a vow to outlast them. On his porch swing, they'd bundle in quilts, her head on his shoulder, his breath soft against her hair. "You're my home," he'd whisper, and she'd swallow tears, nodding, "Forever, James." He was slipping, his hands shook, his voice faded, his eyes dimmed, like fireflies losing their spark. Callie stayed, holding him through fevered nights, reading their old letters, her messy kid scrawl, his pirate sketches. She sang Tulsa's jazz, voice cracking, keeping him near. "We're still us," she'd say, and he'd smile, weak but true. Their love shone, a flame in the cold, but December's end loomed, its shadow dark, stealing him breath by breath. Christmas Eve, James was in hospice, his body fragile, his heart tied to Callie. She hung paper sunflowers on the walls, their yellow a summer memory. She set a tiny tree, lights twinkling like stars, and brought 2 mugs of cocoa, one for him, one for her. His hands couldn't hold his, so she held it, her smile fierce, her heart shattering. She wheeled him to the roof, blankets heavy, Tulsa's sky wide, stars sharp as glass. They sat, quiet, cold biting, their breaths mingling. "I wanted this," James whispered, voice a wisp. "Us, under stars, like always." Tears burned Callie's cheeks, but she gripped his hand tight. "It's ours, James, always." He leaned into her, light as a sigh, his voice faint. "Thank you, Callie, for this December, for you." She kissed his forehead, sobs hushed, holding him as his breath slowed, then stopped. The stars stayed bright and cold, but James was gone, a sunflower fallen in her hands. Days later, Tulsa was empty, its neon dim, its jazz mute. Callie stayed in James's apartment, his flannel draped over her, his mug untouched. She walked to the sunflower field, bare under snow, and sat where they'd sworn their pact. She held a paper sunflower, edges worn, and whispered, "You kept our vow, James. You stayed us." Tears froze on her cheeks, her heart heavy with the love, with nowhere to go, a promise kept but broken. She found his letters in a shoebox, kid notes, pirate dreams, words of forever. "I don't want to lose you," he wrote at 13, and she wept, knowing he never did, even as cancer claimed him. She hung the paper sunflowers by her window, their yellow alight in Tulsa's gray, a piece of James she'd carry, a spark that wouldn't fade. The stories may come to an end, but the thunder and rain will linger a little longer, keeping you company in the quiet of the night. Sleep well, and good night.